And when we get stuck in our old habits and patterns and reactions, often what keeps us stuck is inner judgment or our inner critic going, there you go again. Why did you do that? Why did you say that? To have compassionate response to ourselves would be to say, oh, look at that. That's interesting. Look what was just coming up for me. Can I be kinder to myself for the fact that my response there was a habit? And if it's not serving me anymore or this relationship, how can I shift into a different response?
Hello, and welcome to the Bold Life podcast. Today, I'm joined by marriage and family therapist Joree Rose to talk about why she believes mindfulness is the answer to everything and how you can start to use these strategies and practices in your own life. In addition to working with adults and couples in her now fully virtual practice, Joree is the host of the podcast Journey Forward with Joree Rose, author of the recent book A Year of Gratitude, and she leads retreats for women around the world. Throughout her journey, Joree gained the tools to let go of the habits and mindsets that no longer served her, and how to intentionally create a life of meaning and joy. And she's passionate in guiding others to do the same. Welcome, Joree.
Oh, Nicole, thank you so much for having me. I have to say, hearing my bio being read, it just made me feel with so much pride and very humbled pride because I used to be so stuck. And I sometimes forget, wow, like look what can happen when we get unstuck and get to our passions and goals and living in that space. So I don't know. Thank you for
Oh,
for
you're very
reminding
welcome.
me a little bit about that journey. I'm so happy to be here and talking with you today.
I'm so excited too. Maybe you can start us off and tell us a little bit more about kind of what got you started working in this area.
Yeah, well, I feel like I always knew I wanted to be a therapist. And at the root of it, from the time I was pretty young, I would say maybe junior high or high school, at the root of it, I had a big desire to cultivate a career in which I could be a mom. And I knew I was never going to be down the corporate route. That just wasn't my personality. It wasn't what I knew I would be a strong fit for. So the 9 to 5 cubicle sort of job, corporate structure is not something I ever would have thrived in. So I knew that about myself pretty early. But more importantly, it was my values that really drove my intentions and the values of one day when I want to have kids, I want to be there for them. I want to be home with them. I want to be fully present with them. So I always knew that. And I always knew that I was curious about people and curious about relationships. And that curiosity stemmed from the fact that I actually married and since divorced. That's part of my journey, but I married and since divorced my high school sweetheart. And we were together from the time I was 13 years old. And when we were in high school, I mean, we were kind of, that couple that everyone wanted to emulate. And even at 13, 14, 15 years old, I was so curious, like what makes us work and others not? So I always had a baseline of curiosity about people and about relationships. And I came from a family in which there was a lot of trauma, which led to me being raised with fear and anxiety on a silver platter, to say the least. And my mindset about the world was the world's a really scary place. Bad things happen to good people. And that led me to be really dependent on my mom and dependent on my boyfriend, then husband. And it prevented me from really growing. And so, even though I was young and I was in the midst of all of this, I also kind of had this meta awareness that this is where I was and this is where I was stuck. And I really sought safety, security, and familiarity, which is probably why I stayed with him from all through college and even graduated college a year early to catch up to him because he was a year older than me. And so for so many years, fear and anxiety drove my decisions. And I was aware of it and I was compassionate about it for myself. And at the same time, I was also frustrated by it because it really confused me around, am I here because I want to be or because I'm afraid not to be? And so, again, I had this fascination and curiosity about people and relationships, but I also could so easily see the path of how things out of our control shape us. So when I, graduated from college, I took only a semester off before delving into graduate school, knowing I was going to be a therapist. And I graduated with my master's degree, started my hours. In California, you need 3,000 hours of internships in order to qualify for the state exams, which is a long road because it's not like a year and a half of work, as in a traditional work year is 2,000 hours. But I got about halfway through those hours. And at this time, I was only 24 years old. And I realized, wow, I'm pretty miserable actually. Like here I am, I got what I wanted, which was to be working in this career. I had just gotten married, which is what I wanted. We were together 10 and a half years before getting married. And I was in that elusive, like, I'll be happy when, right? I'll be happy when I get married. And then when we have the house and, when I have my master's degree and I start my road of therapy, all these things. And I was halfway through those hours and I was miserable. And I realized at 24 years old, you know what? Even though I've been through a lot, I didn't have the business of being anybody's therapist because I hadn't worked through my own shit. Hope I can say that on your podcast. I hadn't worked through my own shit yet to really authentically help others. And I think that's why I was so unhappy and unfulfilled, because I felt a little like an imposter. Like, how can I be helping you through this when I'm still living with fear and anxiety and not knowing who I am and how, like, what I'm outside of my roles or outside of my family of origin, right? So I made a really, really hard decision, which was to stop my hours. And I decided, you know what? I just want to have babies. And we had been together for so long at that point. I didn't feel like I needed to be married for very long before having kids. And I'm so glad that I didn't. I got pregnant pretty quickly, and I now have two teenage daughters. So my daughters are now 17 and 15. I've got a sophomore and senior in high school, which just blows my mind because I remember actively being their age, because that was the age I was when I was dating their dad. Like, it's weird to me. But I was so fortunate to be able to be at home with them. And so from the time they were born till my youngest was in kindergarten, I soaked up every single second of those baby years. I was that mom who, I had it pretty easy. My kids were easy. They slept. Like, they were just, I was one of those unique moms who, like, loved what otherwise is the really hard years. To me, those were the absolute best years. And then one day I woke up in my early 30s and was like, how did I get here? Like, I didn't consciously realize what my decisions were to get me where I was, because I was on that trajectory of just doing what was next, what was next, what was next, with that mindset of, if I just do what was next, then I'll be happy. Then I'll be fulfilled. Then I'll figure out who I am. Then I'll be content. And I checked all those boxes and it never quite felt fulfilled. And I realized I had no idea who I was outside of my relationship and outside of being a mom. And from the time I was 13, my name and my husband's names were kind of melded as one. And I had no healthy individuation in that stage of development of my teenage years to just be my own person before forming a lifelong relationship, right? So it kind of threw me into a tizzy and what I call my 1/3 life crisis. I was too
Right.
young for it to be midlife.
Yeah.
So it was my 1/3 life crisis. And it had me do a couple of things. One was, it got me into therapy really for the first time. I'd been in therapy in the past, but not in a way that I was really ready to show up in.
Mhm.
So I got into therapy, and my very first therapy session, I'm sitting on the couch and I'm in this safe, comforting, warm, I could tell, healing environment. And something came over me and I thought, I really like this space. I think I want to go back for my hours. I want to go
Yeah.
back to become a therapist. And I had lost all the hours I already gained
Right.
because outside of that window, 6 years, I had to have it completed. So I pretty much had to start from scratch again. And from that point forward, I had really paused and for the first time in my life really tuned into something bigger than me, that spiritual belief of, okay, universe, here I am, kind of point me in the right direction. I'm going to
Yeah.
surrender to the signs. I'm going to surrender to paying attention. I'm going to increase my awareness. Like, what am I missing? And, it's never just intention setting and then boom, there it is. It's intention setting plus a ton of work. Right? I'm a master manifester. It's not because I just have any better juju than anyone else. I have worked my butt off to make it happen, but I also was gaining clarity on what did I want that to look like, right? So, long story short, I had contacted a previous supervisor who I hadn't spoken to in 8 years. And it was mid school year, which I'd always worked in schools. And she had an opening that was starting the next week. Her intern, who she had lined up, dropped out. And here was this opening. And I contacted her out of the blue. And there was a series of serendipitous events that got me even to that moment. But in that moment, working with that supervisor, I saw a book on her shelf called Mindfulness. That was just on the sleeve of the book. It just said mindfulness. I never even heard of mindfulness. I didn't even know what it was. So I asked her, "What is that?" Like of all the books on her shelf, I asked about that book. And at the time, she had an intern who was teaching mindfulness in the classrooms. And again, series of serendipitous events. I got really curious and I ended up taking a 6-week intro to mindfulness course that started the very following week. And in that very first class, all we did was really meditate for 10 minutes. I mean, the teacher and I, looking back, was not very good at explaining what mindfulness was or the difference between mindfulness and meditation. So, as I look back at that intro to 6-week course, I don't really know what I learned other than I learned that I needed to learn more. And that 10 minutes of sitting in meditation for that first time, I literally, Nicole, thought I was going to die. I had prevented myself from slowing down my whole life for fear of what was I going to sit with, for fear of what do I do with these emotions? What do I do with these thoughts? For fear of what if I don't want to be in this place that I am? And so I think I was that classic example of staying busy and kind of attaching my happiness to some future outcome to prevent myself from really learning about who I was and what I needed internally. So I, as a dedicated learner and very, I threw myself into it. And those following years, I delved deeply into both the personal and professional practice of understanding mindfulness and meditation. I got certified to teach mindfulness to kids, and I did that for 4 years at the school that I worked at as a school counselor. And it became my passion. I went on retreats and had incredibly life changing experiences on retreats, which was why I'm so passionate about leading retreats now, because I want to be able to create that transformative experience for others. I even went on a 5-day silent Buddhist meditation retreat where for 5 days we meditated for 16 hours a day. No reading, no writing, no eye contact, no talking. Like I started talking really young and I haven't stopped since. So the fact that I can do that for 5 days, anyone can. And it gave me a set of tools and it changed my life. And it wasn't an easy nor a straight path, but it has become the path I want to help others follow of how do I get out of my head, out of my stories, out of those expectations and those shoulds, and how do I tune into what's in my body, what's in my gut, what's in my heart, my true essence outside of these roles. And I ended up getting divorced, and right around the time of my divorce I got licensed as a therapist and built a practice which immediately took off because I had spent a good 7 or 8 years teaching mindfulness in my community, doing workshops, doing classes, speaking at PTA talks and conferences, and really wanting to be known for I can teach you mindfulness in a way that you're going to relate to. And I do a lot of mindful parenting work. And so it has really been this beautiful intersection of this personal and professional path in which I am now living my highest value, which is authenticity, Because when I was really stuck and I was starting to want to do this work, I was really afraid I was going to be on some stage somewhere someday giving a talk, teaching people how to live their lives in a more mindful way, which would include authenticity and presence and self compassion and getting out of your head and letting go of fear and anxiety and attachment as a way of ruling my day to day. And my fear was that someone was going to stand up and point their finger at me and be like, okay, but you're not doing that. And that fear of that one potential person in some audience somewhere calling me out was enough to make me turn my life upside down in many ways to say, I want to live in 100% alignment of what I'm teaching. Was not easy, and I'm doing it. And so that's the long answer of how I got here.
Yeah. I love that. I think that really will resonate with a lot of our listeners. And especially what you mentioned, I love that you said, you're going through life for so long, just kind of waiting for the next thing. And I think a lot of us get into that trap, right? Of like, I'll feel happy when, or I'll feel successful when, or I'll feel fulfilled when, or I'll have confidence when, or whatever. And so we're always waiting for that thing. And then it
Yes.
gets us into this bad mental habit of never feeling comfortable or confident where we are.
Yes. Yes. And some of that can be, something tangible you can change. But for me, the big shift there was really a couple things. Was one, learning to see that my thoughts were not my truth. So being able to not believe everything I thought, that was big. But more importantly, was a matter of shifting my mindset. And my mindset had been partly in the way I was raised was that the future is scary. It's unknown, and unknown equals fear. Therefore, we've got anxiety when we think about the unknown. So, to combat fear and anxiety, let's just stay in the known. But here was the problem I was in. I was in the known and I wasn't happy. I take that back. I was happy, but I wasn't fulfilled, right? It was more existential. It was, I actually, and I feel strange saying this because I don't want to come across as selfish or ungrateful. I kind of had everything I ever wanted. I had this beautiful home and 3 weeks of vacation because my husband was successful and could take us on vacation, and these perfect kids that I got to stay home with. But it wasn't those surface level things. It was internally, right? That I wasn't fulfilled within my own sense of self. And I think many people can get stuck on the surface level, like, but you've got a beautiful life. Yes, but your lifestyle is not your life. And I was focusing in on my internal existence, not the beautiful things that I had. But so my mindset was the future used to be known as the scary place, that like big black abyss of fear. But I had to recognize, wait a second. If I used to believe that the known was safe and happy and fulfilling, and the future was unknown and therefore scary, but I was in the known and I wasn't happy. So there was something that shifted in me that was like, perhaps possibility is what resides in the unknown. And that was huge because then it felt empowering that I get to create it. And that was a major mindset shift for me to get out of my own way. And that was coupled with my single most life defining moment that occurred on a retreat. And, from there, I was able to say, I can be scared and still take a step forward. I can have it be unknown and choose to believe I'm going to trust in the universe. And as long as I'm in alignment, I'm going to be okay. And those were a hugely different set of thoughts than what I was used to thinking. So it's easier said than done, but I was using my tools of mindfulness and I was practicing meditation, which is a foundation of a mindfulness practice. And I was actually doing the tools that I teach others to do. And lo and behold, they work. They work to help you detach from those thoughts that you used to believe is truth. They help you to stay more present rather than live in the past or fear the future. They work to help you gain skills and tools of gratitude and, most importantly, self-compassion. And it's been an ongoing journey. And I now have this thriving private practice that is now, thank you, COVID virtual, so I can help people all over the world. And I have clients all over the world now. But to help them see, like, it's not your fault for where you're stuck, and it's your responsibility if you want to get unstuck. And here's the tools I can help you with.
Yeah. I love that. While I have you here, I want us to spend some time talking about mindfulness because now that I think back, I
Yes.
don't think we've actually really talked about it a lot on the show, which is funny. So, can you tell us what is mindfulness? What do you mean by that?
Yes. So, can I throw it right back at you? Because I
Yes.
love to help clarify. When you hear the word mindfulness, what do you think it means?
So I think about focus and focus on the present moment. So bringing my intention, my focus into the here and now, and really paying attention on purpose to what I'm doing. Not all the stuff out here and the what
Yes.
ifs and the what happened, but bringing my focus in the moment.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's a beautiful answer. And I ask you that because I think a lot of people, number one, they mistakenly interchange the words of mindfulness and meditation.
Yes.
They are two different practices, and people don't understand the difference. Secondly, mindfulness can be a very esoteric conceptual practice, and I really have worked hard to make it very tangible and relatable of
Mhm.
like, okay, that all sounds lovely, but what does that actually mean in the
Yeah.
present moment? Like, what does that actually look like?
Mhm.
So let me first give the foundation of what I describe as the difference of meditation and mindfulness. So I consider meditation to be a formal practice, whereas mindfulness is an informal practice. And what that means is meditation is something you actually do. You actually create the space. And I define meditation pretty simply because a lot of people get stuck of what does even that mean. There's a lot of myths, preconceptions, misconceptions, judgments, or assumptions, such as when I meditate, I'm supposed to feel calm. When I meditate, I will have a clear mind. When I meditate, I will feel peaceful. That doesn't often happen. And so when people don't experience that, they easily think, I'm not good at this. I can't do this. This doesn't work for me. And it prevents them from actually engaging in a practice in which they can benefit from. So I like to make it really simple. Meditation is, I define it as simply slowing down and creating the space to allow whatever is arising to exist without judgment. So you're simply just observing and then coming back. So there's two pieces in a meditation to focus on. One is called open awareness or open monitoring, where you're just noticing, oh, look, there's that thought. Oh, look, there's that sound. Oh, look, this is what I smell. Oh, look, there's this distraction. Whatever it is. Oh, look, here's this emotion or this sensation in my body. We just allow it to exist without having to do anything about it. And the second piece is focused attention. So there's usually some object of attention we're bringing our awareness back to. Most often in meditation, it's our breath, because the breath is going to have healing qualities for the brain and the body, but it could be something you look at. It could be something you're touching. It could be a mantra in your mind. It could be a sound. So the focus of our meditation can be different. Mindfulness is taking that foundation of open monitoring and focused attention off the cushion, so to speak, and into our everyday lives. So I look at meditation as simply practice for our everyday life, right? And another way of saying it is like meditation's like going to the gym and doing bicep curls. Mindfulness is now having stronger muscles to give you the strength to live your life in the way you want to live. So, mindfulness, as I define it, is living with greater awareness, greater attention, and greater intention. So, what do we want to be more aware of? Well, we want to be aware of what's arising inside of us internally. Okay, so what do we have internally? We've got thoughts, we've got emotions, we've got sensations, and then awareness of what's happening externally, distractions, people, social media, the news, politics, climate, right? There's internal, there's external awarenesses. The second thing is to pay attention and to ask ourselves, what do I normally do? What are my typical habits, patterns, reactions, or mindsets whenever I experience a thought, emotion, sensation, or something externally, because we all have habits and patterns,
Hmm.
right? Maybe a reaction to our thoughts are to believe them, or maybe a habit with our emotions is to shut them down, or maybe a pattern in our relationships is to pull up walls of self protection. And,
Yeah.
so we all have things that arise and we all have patterns in what we do with them. Okay.
Yeah.
The last piece of intention is to ask ourselves, why am I doing what I'm doing? To be more mindful is to be more aware of what's arising, to be more intentional in our response. Because so often those habits, patterns, mindsets, and reactions are formed and we never look back. We never ask ourselves, does that still serve me at this point in time? Where did I even develop that pattern from? Maybe that was actually what my mom thought and not actually what I thought, but I took it on as my own because that's how I was raised. So I never been curious about it, right? So that's kind of the main foundation of how I teach it as a concept and as a practice. But then there are these very nuanced pieces. And as you said, to be more present. Well, if we're not present, where are we? Well, our minds wander to the past and it wanders to the future. And the key that the Buddha discovered when he sat down under the Bodhi tree to say, how can I be happy forever? This is the key that we're all trying to understand. How can I reduce my suffering and increase my happiness? That's the main question of life, right? How can I suffer less and be happier more? And the Buddha discovered being in the present moment is actually what decreases our suffering and increases our happiness, because in the present moment, as long as you're breathing, there's more right with you than wrong with you. And even if you're getting through the worst case scenario, you're getting through it. And it's usually the attachments and the thoughts that we have to the worst case scenario that makes it harder. It's the expectations, right? So there's foundational mindsets that when practicing mindfulness, we want to adopt. Noticing our attachments to the outcomes, noticing our expectations. As I often say, expectations are our quickest path to suffering. That person didn't do what I wanted them to do. Well, where did that thought even come from? What was that based in? That was based in a thought, right? That was based in maybe not reality about who that person's ever been. And when we can be more curious and compassionate, and these are words, awareness, curiosity, and compassion, I use over and over and over again. To me, compassion is the opposite of judgment. And when we get stuck in our old habits and patterns and reactions, often what keeps us stuck is inner judgment or our inner critic going, there you go again. Why did you do that? Why did you say that? To have compassionate response to ourselves would be to say, oh, look at that. That's interesting. Look what was just coming up for me. Can I be kinder to myself for the fact that my response there was a habit? And if it's not serving me anymore or this relationship, how can I shift into a different response? So ultimately, to me, to be more mindful is to respond and not react to whatever's arising. Because if we're being present, if we are being aware, paying attention, having intention, we are inherently responding and not reacting. Because each moment is a brand new opportunity, a brand new moment for our own inner awareness. And when we can adopt some of these other mindsets, gratitude, compassion, loving kindness, right? Having that curiosity, increasing that awareness, tuning into our breath as a tool to calm the brain and calm the body. We not only are going to connect deeper with ourselves, but it's going to allow us to connect deeper with others and give us the possibility for living that more authentic, aligned, peaceful, calm, resilient, adaptable life, which, especially in these days and time, we all need more of that. So, having a meditation practice is the foundation because it starts to be what rewires your brain towards those new habits, right? If you're sitting in a meditation and you get stuck on a negative reactive thought pattern of, I can't do this, I suck, why is this so hard? If you can just notice, oh, look at that, I'm having that thought, let me come back into compassion and just say, this is hard right now, and come back to my breath. You've started to rewire your brain for a new habit whenever that thought comes up. So now when you're in your everyday life and you're in a real-time interaction and that thought comes up, you now have a choice. I can go down the old path, which was self-judgment, inner critic, reactivity, or I can be like, wait, when I sat in meditation, I was able to respond differently to that thought. I can respond differently now.
Yeah, I love that. And I think this is so great for our community of recovering perfectionists and overachievers who we have this tendency to be so self critical of what we've done as soon as we do something, or we're so worried about
Yes.
all those what ifs all the time. Right. And so getting into that practice and that mindset of being able to have these things happen and from a non judgmental, from a supportive place and being less focused on those outcomes, like you said.
Yeah. So I
Hmm.
want to give two little tips based on the
Hmm.
two things you just said that I think would be really helpful for your listeners.
Yes.
The what if is one of our biggest demons as humans. It can get us so stuck and we can spiral there pretty easily, right? I love to be able to guide my clients that whenever that what if question comes up, because that's always about some future unknown, let's replace the thought or the question of what if with what is. What is what's happening right now. What is, I may not like it. And at the root, there's so many roots of it, but one of the roots of a mindfulness practice is acceptance. It's the question my clients say to me all the time, Joree, how do I accept what I don't like? Well, Nicole, not accepting it doesn't make it go away. Not accepting whatever is arising only makes your reaction to it bigger, where you've got more resistance and denial, which is going to lead to more inner critic and judgment. So you don't have to like it to accept that it's here. Okay, so what is versus what if? The other piece that you said about our inner critic taking over, I always like to have people get really curious of what is the underlying message your inner critic is giving and see if you can find potentially a positive intention your inner critic has, but maybe their delivery is just horrible. So let's say I'm really trying to eat healthy and I have cookies in front of me and I decide to like eat the whole damn cookie. My inner critic could easily take over and be like, Joy, why did you do that? You didn't meet your goals for today. You can't stick to what you're working on, and like can take over from there. That delivery doesn't feel good, right? But if I get curious, what is the intention of my inner critic in that moment? The intention is, Joy, I'm trying to help you stay on your health goals. So, can I be compassionate to the part of me that feels criticized, right? That I did, the I and the me here. But then can I also see how possibly I could reframe that inner critic into, wow, actually, thank you, Miss Inner Critic, for helping me remind me of what my health goals are. Let me see if I can talk to myself in a kinder way next time that comes up. Because I really believe our inner critic actually wants the best for us, but they're doing it from a place of judgment and discouragement rather than encouragement and here's how I can help you.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. We've talked about on the show a lot about how really at the heart, our brains are just trying to protect us,
Yeah.
right? They're trying to keep us safe. And that is exactly what you're explaining here.
And,
Mhm.
the inner critic getting mad at me for eating the cookie is really the protection to say, don't do that again.
Yeah.
Rather to say, you know what? I totally understand why you had the cookie. I hope you enjoyed it. Next time, maybe have a bite versus the whole one, and you'll
Yeah.
feel better about yourself, right? Like, but it's a lot of that reframing, but we can't reframe without awareness,
Yes.
and we can't reframe without compassion,
Yeah.
self compassion.
Yeah. I'm taking notes. I hope others are taking notes too. So that awareness and compassion really are the first step. And it sounds like you'd recommend starting with a focus on that practice of meditation to give yourself that space to find the awareness.
Yes. And let me give people permission because when I was first learning these tools, my teachers I literally traveled across the country to have some of the best teachers in the world. Really, I wanted to learn from the top. And at the time, the belief was that you had to meditate for 20 to 40 minutes a day for it to be valid. And I'm like, I call BS. I'm like, I don't know about you, Nicole, but like, I don't have 20 to 40 minutes in my day. And I can guarantee if I did, it likely wouldn't be spent in meditation. So I had to compassionately meet myself where I was at to say, well, what can I do? And let me start there. Because if I don't meet myself where I'm at, and if I don't allow myself to build from a place of honoring my successes, I'm never going to get that step forward. So I actually started in my car. Now, mind you, my eyes were open. This was not like sitting with my eyes closed because meditation can take on different forms. But for me in my car, it was about complete focused awareness and attention. So I put down the phone, I turned off the radio, and I tuned into my breath while I was driving and my senses. I took in the surroundings. I noticed the colors of the car around me. I noticed my thoughts. If there was traffic, I didn't judge me or the traffic. It is what it is. I came to equanimity and acceptance. It's just traffic. I looked at the color of the sky and the color of the flowers blooming on the hillside. And I noticed when I would just intentionally drive with that level of meditative awareness of connecting to my breath, consciously breathing in, consciously breathing out, I got to where I was going and I felt calmer and more present. So, whether it's standing in line at the grocery store and not picking up your phone and scrolling Facebook or checking your email for those 30 seconds, but just feeling your feet on the ground, grounding into the earth beneath you, finding your breath in your body, taking a few mindful breaths in and out, that's meditation. Folding the laundry, doing the dishes, taking a shower, making love, hugging your child, like all these moments is just simply asking you, am I here? Am I being aware? What am I connecting my awareness and my attention to? And, I still sit on a cushion. Maybe I do it for 3 minutes. Maybe I do it for five. Maybe I do it for 10, but I'm not judging the length of time as good or bad. I often say the best meditation is the one you show up for. There's no good or bad meditation. There's no, I did it better today. It was no, did you do it or not? That's all. And even if you didn't, don't judge that either. Compassion, right? But that meditation does give you the foundation to taking it into your everyday life.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. So, Jory, if folks want to find out more about you or they want to learn how they can work with you, where can they go?
Yes, probably the easiest one stop shop is my website, which is joreerose.com. You could find me on social media. I post daily on Instagram at Joree Rose. And I have a podcast, as you mentioned, Journey Forward with Joree Rose. Obviously, my website's going to give all links to that. I do have a couple of different offers you can find, some freebies, some downloads, some tools. So yeah, please reach out if you've got questions or want to learn more how to integrate this. I a couple of times throughout the year do a different online course, an 8-week course called the Journey Forward Method, in which I guide people into practical application of mindfulness tools to get unstuck in their lives. So yeah, would love to connect and with anyone further who would be interested in learning more.
Yes, we'll put all those links in the show notes as well so folks can find you easily. Well,
Thank you
thank
so
you.
much for
You're
having me,
welcome. Thank
Nicole.
you so much. I was going to say for being here. I learned so much. I took notes, like I said, and I hope others did as well.
Wonderful.
That's a wrap for today. Thanks for listening. I'm Dr. Nicole Byers, and you're listening to the Bold Life Podcast.